Hey guys, Tekking here, and welcome back to my Admiral discussions in One Piece. Today's video is going to be about a new Admiral, FUJITORA, the Purple Tiger, also known as Issho. Now, FUJITORA was introduced after the time skip, so basically what happened is you had, Sengoku as the Fleet Admiral, and then Aokiji, Akainu, and Kizaru as the Admirals. Sengoku decides to step down after the war, Akainu and Aokiji have their fight, Aokiji loses, he decides to leave and, defect from the Marines, Akainu becomes the new Fleet Admiral, Kizaru remains as an Admiral, and you have two spots to fill. Now, apparently, FUJITORA was, and as well as with the other new Admiral, who we haven't seen yet, Ryokyogu, they were actually not part of the Marines beforehand. It wasn't like they were just really high-ranking, like Vice Admirals or something, and they just got bumped up the ranks. No, they were apparently instituted into the Marines through a world military draft, and we don't exactly know how that works, but that was basically Oda's way of just saying that, Issho was not part of the Marines, so that's why you didn't see him during the War of the Best or anything like that. Because obviously, if they had that strong of a guy in the Marines, we would have saw him before the time skip, as well as with the other Admiral as well, Ryokyogu, which I may or may not be pronouncing correctly. By the way, there isn't going to be a video about him, just because we know nothing about him other than his name, his epitaph is Green Bowl, and we saw like a silhouette of him once, and Doflamingo alluded that he's really powerful. Like him and Issho are really powerful, but that's all we have to go on here. So we don't have any idea for what he looks like, what his personality is. I mean, I have to have something more to go off of if I'm going to make a video about the guy. But no, we're talking about Issho here. So he was drafted into the Marines, and he's apparently on good standings with Sakazuki, with Akainu, at least when he was first instituted in the Marines, because he's, that's the final authority. Like, you guys are going to be the new Admirals in the Marines, the High Admirals, the highest position in the Marines, right under me, and I want you guys there, alongside Kizaru. So, obviously, Akainu had a lot of faith and trust in both Issho and Ryokyogu. So, you have Issho here. Now, he shows up in Dressrossa. They're basically sending him there to deal with the whole situation with Luffy and Law forming an alliance. So, when Luffy and Law, allied together, their goal was, okay, we're going to make Doflamingo resign from the warlords as part of their strategy to get, the Smile factory destroyed. They've kidnapped Caesar Clown. They're going to use him as ransom, and they're trying to take down the factory on Dressrossa. So, therefore, Kaido gets really pissed at Doflamingo and just beats the shit out of him. That's their strategy. In the meantime, Doflamingo has his own plan, and since Doflamingo is a warlord, he is still technically allied with the government and the Marines. So Issho is sent there with his crew of Marines, and Akainu basically tells him, Doflamingo did not actually resign from the warlords. It was just a ruse to fool Luffy and Law to get them to come to the island, and that's going to be your job, is to basically take care of that problem. Now, Issho is he's a very conflicted man. Even though he is trusted by Sakazuki to the point where he would make him an admiral, he does not share his same ideals of absolute justice with Akainu. He tends to put the civilians' own lives ahead of the mission, which is something that Akainu did not do. And just his morals alone seem to be very, very differing. It's almost as if Issho had like a high view of the Marines when he was not part of that group. He felt like, like everybody else, like the Marines are supposed to be the good guys. The world government is supposed to be this beacon of goodness in the world that's supposed to, bring the pirates to justice. And then after he got drafted into the military and he became an admiral, then he starts to see behind the veil, and he starts to look around and he understands that the Marines are corrupted at a point, and the world government even more so. Probably the most famous line from his character throughout Dressrossa is, "Does the world government think they're a bunch of gods or something?" That's basically what he's coming to terms with this. And I think because he's just coming to terms with this, like, we see him make this transition throughout the arc, because he's only really appeared in Dressrossa. Now, keep in mind, Dressrossa is the longest One Piece arc. It's over 100 chapters. I think it's 102 chapters or something like that. So even though he only appeared that one arc really notably, we get to see a big transition of his character in the almost 2 year, over, I think, a year and a half of serialization. that we had that there. So he starts off as just like, all right, I'm the Admiral, we're going to, you're going to Dressrossa, we're going to deal with that. And then he discovers that Doflamingo, all the shady shit he's doing behind the scenes, he's part of the underworld. And I think he's conflicted on what exactly he's going to do. And for that reason, I feel like he doesn't make... He makes decisions and then immediately seems to go back on those decisions, or doesn't at least seem to carry those decisions through. All right? It's almost like he's confused about what to do so much that he doesn't have any conviction in sticking with his grounds. Okay? Let me explain what this is. Okay? So he's not a fan of the warlord system. Like, I think even before he joined the Marines, he was not a fan of that. He's not a fan of the warlords. He wants that whole system to be abolished, probably because he doesn't like the idea of the Marines and the government working together with fucking pirates. So he instantly doesn't like Doflamingo. But he's still an admiral, and the warlords are allied with the Marines, so he has to kind of just, bite his tongue and just fucking deal with it, right? But Issho, after meeting Doflamingo shortly after him on Greenbit, he revokes his title of warlord. Because, he has the authority to do that, I guess. He's a fucking admiral, sure. But right after he says that, right after he states, I'm going to revoke your title or whatever, and he seems to not be on good terms with Doflamingo, they immediately go and seem to team up to take down Luffy and Law. So, I don't know. It's just little moments like that, And then you have a moment where he fights against Sabo, and that doesn't really conclude in any meaningful way. They kind of fight, and they joke around a little bit, and he just kind of like, the Marines I thought the Marines were heroes, or the Marines aren't, or even the Marines are not heroes in this world. There are no such things as, like, these heroes in the world, and there was, like, a little bit of that fight, but that didn't really go anywhere. There were multiple confrontations, or multiple points in the arc where he could have confronted Doflamingo and taken his ass out, but he doesn't do that. Probably because he's like, all right, so I'm still part of the government, so I can't take out Doflamingo. But after the actions are completed, after, Luffy, King Kong gungs the fuck out of Doflamingo and takes him out, Issho takes it upon himself to apologize to King Riku and to the rest of Dressrossa, and they, have this really emotional moment where they prostrate themselves before Riku and apologize for the sake of the world government. So you didn't really do anything to really try to stop the massive amounts of death and bloodshed, even though you had the chance to multiple times, but you're still going to apologize for it. Isn't that kind of like a firefighter watching a fucking house burn, not doing a goddamn thing about it, and then the citizens of the town take it upon themselves to extinguish the fire, and then afterwards, after the firefighter doesn't do anything, he just kind of lies prostrate on the fucking ground amongst the people whose house got burned down, and like, we're really sorry about this fire burning your house down, and we're sorry we didn't really do much. Firefighters are corrupted. I just don't know what to tell you. Our hands were tied. I have nothing but respect for firefighters. I have 2 friends that are firefighters. But isn't that kind of like what it is, though? I mean, like, the entire town got wrecked. A lot of people died. You had families that were fucked up through to Doflamingo's actions and Sugar's abilities. This is obviously 18 ways of fucked up that is going way beyond anything that is allowed within the warlords. I think you would have the authority to just fucking kill them. But maybe that's why Issho doesn't. Maybe that's why he's conflicted in a sense. Maybe that's also part of the line he states of, does the world government think they're gods? Where maybe Issho feels like, I am not a god. I am not some kind of all-powerful judging person or entity. Therefore, I will not take it upon myself to take out Doflamingo. Maybe that is another way to spin it. Maybe he doesn't feel like, maybe I should just leave it up to fate to decide who or what is going to, reign victorious. And we see that again. We see that after the arc, during the post-arc, when everyone's just kind of recovering, when Issho is still stationed on the island, and Luffy and his friends are still on the island, and the palace is filled with all the pirates and the members of that were in the Colosseum and shit. Issho knows they're there, but he decides not to do anything about it. Instead, he rolls a fucking dice every day, and he's like, if the dice comes up anything but 1, then we'll go after the Straw Hats, and we'll go after those pirates in the castle. And so he rolls the dice, and it shows up 1, and he's like, oh, fate has decided that he will remain safe. And then he rolls it again the next day, and he's like, whoa, once again. Oh, two in a row. That's crazy. Fate really must love Straw Hats. I mean, look, One Piece is filled with a lot of quirky characters. I understand this and everything like that, right? But usually it's like a character that's pretty wacky and kooky, you know, stays wacky and kooky like that, and I could see them doing weird shit like that. But Issho seems to be honestly conflicted, like, man, I need to stop this horrible evil act, but I can't because I'm part of the government, and you know what, I'll just let the fucking dice decide. I'm like, that seems a little bit irresponsible there, Issho. Even when Sengoku and Suryu show up, and they're like, wait, you've been doing what? You've been letting a fucking dice decide? What is wrong with you? You're a fucking admiral! Get your fucking blind ass moving and capture the goddamn pirates! They're right there! You know where they are! But the dice decides his fate. You know, no, you decide his fate! You're the one with the fucking badass gravity powers, okay? Oh, it's just, you know what? It might just be hard to pin down his character because, like I said, you know, he was just introduced, and we did make a lot of, you know, different detours along the Dressrossa Arc. There was a lot of shit going on there in the Dressrossa Arc, so, you know, maybe that might have seen his character a little bit of scattershotted there, but there's just a lot of shit he did where it's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm having a hard time pin down exactly where his morals lie, where his convictions lie, shit like that. Like, for example, if you were going to put Fujitora in an alignment, you know how alignments work, you know, like in D&D, you know, like lawful good, lawful neutral, chaotic good, you know, shit like that, all the way up to like chaotic evil, lawful evil, you know, where would you put Fujitora? He would probably be in one of the neutral areas or something like that, because it really just bugs the crap out of me. Maybe lawful neutral, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, he lets fate decide, which basically means, you know, oh, well, Luffy is the one that finished off Doflamingo, so everything turned out okay. So as long as you're not the one actually doing it, it's okay then, you know. Oh, okay, I guess I could have beat him up and I could have ended this fucking problem, but Luffy did. So I didn't have to get involved, so we're all good anyway. That just blows my mind, right? All right, well, let's talk about his powers for now, okay? So that turned into a little bit of rant. I didn't expect to go down that road with it. Okay, so Issho has the ability to manipulate gravity through an unknown devil fruit. We do not know its name. It's a paramethea, though. So it's a few different ways he can do this. He has a sword, which also doubles as a cane because he's blind. He actually inflicted the wounds on his eyes himself because he was tired of seeing all the evil in the world. So he had to blind himself to prevent him from seeing it. Although he still can see the world using his observation hockey. He sees the world as sort of like a mixture of auras around him. So that's how he can still walk around. He knows when somebody is present. But he cannot make out their facial features or anything like that. Just like their general aura. And so where they are and everything like that. And probably whether or not they're in distress and everything. And his hearing is probably also heightened, you know, because he's blind and all that shit. He doesn't like being pitied for that, by the way, either. When Luffy fought him, Luffy was shouting all of his techniques, like, I'm gonna punch you from the right, I'm gonna punch you from the left, and Fujitora is just like, are you pitying me? And Luffy's idea of is like, no, I'm not pitying you, it's just, I kind of respect you, I kind of think you're a cool dude, and so therefore I want this to be a more even fight. So that made Issho kind of laugh, and that was the one time he felt like, you know, I feel like I wish I wouldn't have blinded myself so I could see your face, the face of all these people that risked their lives to save you, Luffy. You've actually made me curious. Whatever. Anyway, yeah, so his devil fruit. With his sword, he can shoot up like a wave of energy, like circular waves of energy up into the sky. And whenever those get there, it's like gravity, so it goes into space and captures a meteor or whatever, and then just drives the meteor right fucking straight down onto the planet. And so that's his first major attack we see him utilize. So any character that can drop a meteor on your fucking face, pretty badass for a first appearance. You know, badass blind guy that can summon goddamn meteors, kind of like Madara, except, you know. But, you know, once again, like the fact that he could just like, okay, why doesn't he just drop that on Doflamingo? Why doesn't he just do that a lot, just, finish him off or whatever? Actually, he does, though. He does. During their little three-way confrontation when they're on Green Bit, you have Law and Fujitora and Doflamingo there, and when Issho does bring down the meteor, Doflamingo's string fruit powers was able to, dice it up, but he was still looking very nervous when he did it. He was just like, oh, son of a bitch! And it was like throwing up the strings, hoping to dodge it, but he was sweating, so Doflamingo was pretty nervous by Issho possibly turning on him. But yeah, that was the case there. He also has an ability that he displayed when he was fighting Sabo, which allowed him to basically just repel everything around him, kind of like Pain's ability from Naruto. Shinra Tensei just repels everything, to the point where all the buildings around him got pushed away, and Sabo himself, he was a Lodia, he ate the Maramara no Mi at this point, so he was made of fire, so the force of this gravity hitting Sabo, dispersed his entire body into flames, and he began to reconstitute himself. So that's like a wave of gravity, as well as his ability he showed at the end of Dressrosa, which allowed him to levitate all the debris up into the air, so he can use gravity in both directions. He's also shown abilities to just, he cuts. It's kind of like how Law's fruit works, how Law incorporates his swordsmanship into his Op no Mi abilities. It's kind of the same thing with Fujitora, where he'll take out his sword and he can use a slash attack, and the slash attack, gravity blade, and then anything that would get cut by this gets, thrown to the ground by his gravity. So it obviously, it probably has an area around him similar to Law's room that he can implement it, in his immediate vicinity, or he can do that weird wave thing to shoot circle energy up into the air to drag down a meteor. But even then, that might be limited to just his own area, just extended really high up, So maybe there's some range like that where his gravity, doesn't, he can't manipulate it beyond a certain point. But it's at least the entire island of Dressrosa, because, he was able to levitate all the debris. So he's an extremely strong guy. Yeah, and the last time we saw him he was part of the caravan that was taking the prisoner transfer from Dressrosa to Impel Down. They captured Doflamingo after Luffy beat the shit out of him. That's when they decided to take action, because I guess it was fate. He leaves it up to the fate. Okay, fine. Captures Doflamingo, transports him to Impel Down. Aki Inu tells him, I don't want you let Luffy escape. I'm gonna make sure that there's gonna be no fucking marine base that's gonna accept you until that you rectify this, until you capture Luffy. Fujitora's like, alright, I'll do that. So, whatever. I mean, it might just be a way for Oda to further the plot, because, you can't, all the shit that's going on with Dressrosa, you have the Marines right there, so Oda had to come up with a reason why the Marines aren't just going to capture Luffy. And I think that's just a really, really lame way to do it when letting the dice to decide your fate, but whatever. But yeah, so Fujitora is now on this mission now, I guess, to wander the seas until he can eventually capture Straw Hat and then rectify what he did wrong in Dressrosa before Akinu will accept him back in the fold. And he also kind of embarrassed the government as well, because remember back what happened with Alabasta? The government, after they found out Crocodile was Mr. Zero and he was the one behind all that shit in Alabasta, the government put a lid on that as quick as possible. It was like, no, Luffy did not take out Crocodile. It was Smoker. Smoker was the one that exposed all this shit. It was the Marines that came to justice, and exposed the warlord. It wasn't a pirate. So Smoker took all the credit for Alabasta. He didn't want to. He was against it, but the Marines just kind of forced it on him. The government forced it upon him. That's how Smoker actually rose from captain to Commodore, is through the events of Dressrosa, and he kind of was on the events of Alabasta, and Smoker was really upset by that. And I think Smoker and Issho had even had a moment where they were talking to each other, or at least Smoker mentioned Issho about the events that happened in Alabasta, and that's when Issho was starting to really understand the way that the world government is, and he didn't want that same shit to happen with Dressrosa. So when the government and the Marines were all ready to go and put a lid on this shit, that's when Issho, bows before King Riku, and the entire Marines before him lie prostrate, and they apologize for the government's negligence, and the government was kind of pissed at him for that. And the government, the Gorosei probably chewed out Aki Inu for that, and that's why Aki Inu was so strict with Fujitora. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, he was in they were on the transport ship with Doflamingo. Jack attacks the transport ship. Jack's kind of a what's the word? Fucking retard, because he's attacking a ship that he knows is being guarded by the former Fleet Admiral Sengoku, the great tactician Vice Admiral Osuru, Saru, I don't know. I'm just going to say random words to make people pissed off because of the pronunciation at some point. I don't know. Suru, I guess it is. And then Admiral Fujitora, right? So, yeah, you're kind of a retard there, Jack. That's, I think, the only way I can really say it there. Jack gets the shit beat out of him. I think he manages to sink 2 Marine ships, but they still beat his ass and they got away. And the transport ship manages to get to impel down just fine, and they managed to beat back Jack in some way. Also, it's important to mention that while Doflamingo was being transported, I think he mentioned to Suru that if Fujitora would have actually worked with me there, if he actually would have fought with me in Dressrossa, we would have beaten Straw Hat, and we would have crushed everybody, no fucking question. So he certainly is very strong, but it's like, you know what it was? It's like after he found out everything, after, he discovered that the Marines and the government are corrupted to this point, and Doflamingo's action as an underworld broker, didn't Maynard even at one point say to him, like, hey, Vice Admiral Maynard came up to Issho, didn't he say to him, hey, look, we know that Doflamingo's in charge of this underground fucking, he's Joker. He's in charge of the mafia and all this illegal trafficking and devil fruits and human trafficking and all this dark shit. So I think now's the time to take him in. And Isho's just like, nope. So I think it's just he's just neutral. Fuck lawful neutral. He's true neutral. Fujitora is true neutral. And he'll just let fate decide it. I'm not going to get involved. I'll just let Luffy and see if Luffy wins, then that means justice prevails or some shit like that. I don't know. But maybe we'll get to see him again in the story. Maybe he'll change a bit. Maybe we'll understand a little bit more about his character. Maybe I'm just missing the point here. But to me, it was a very, very frustrating character. When he seems very convicted, like, I am relinquishing your title of warlord, but I'm still going to help you take law into custody. I'm like, all right, whatever. Anyway, that's Fujitora. All right, that's pretty much all we know about him at this point. Moving on, we're probably going to see him again. You know what? I hope we see him in Wano Kuni. I mean, I'm pretty sure. He's a swordsman. We got the swordsman shit going on here, so yeah, let's hope we see him in Wano Kuni there, trying to find the other Straw Hats and trying to take them into custody. We saw him fight with Zoro very briefly. That's one thing I gotta give him. We did see some cool fights. He had some cool matchups, Fujitora against Doflamingo and Law, Fujitora against Zoro briefly, Fujitora against Luffy, Fujitora versus fucking Sabo. None of those fights really ended in any... In fact, I think every single one of them ended in a really shitty way. And every single one of them was just kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to leave now, or it gets interrupted, or they just run away from him. But he had some cool fights, some cool matchups, cool power. I just think it's his morals and his convictions are a little bit screwy. And his throwing the hands of fate to decide Straw Hat's goal. He's not a very... He's not an intervener, I guess I should say. He doesn't believe in intervention. He believes that, I should just let the world decide instead of me actually getting involved here and acting like a god. I think you're looking at it a little bit too extreme, considering you shouldn't be a Marine Admiral with that kind of ideal, basically. But anyway, I've jawed on long enough about that. So that'll be all the active Marine Admirals that I'm going to cover. Like I said, I'm not going to do Ryokyogu until later on. I will do a video about him once we get his introduction. Maybe we find a little bit out about his personality and his abilities and shit. The next video is going to be about, it's going to be a double header. I'm actually going to do Sengoku and Garp in the same video. Because I think that both of those don't... Garp, is a really cool character, but we don't really know much about him to the point where it's like I think I can make a solid video about him. And Garp and Sengoku's past are kind of like closely tied together, and that relates back to Roger. So I think it would be fair to put them in the same video, and because I want to talk about Sengoku, but at the same time, I don't think Sengoku, not really much to talk about with him that constitutes a whole 20-25 minute video or whatever. But yeah, see that, and then after we're done with that video, we will move on to the discussions of all of the Straw Hats. So I'm really pumped for that. Hope you guys enjoyed. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Later.